What we're going to look at now is a rationale for the breath counting concentration exercise. And one of the first questions that might come to mind is, how could doing something so apparently and completely unrelated to golf as counting my breath, how could it possibly be helpful? How could it help my golf game? And indeed, why should I actually do this? This exercise may sound simple, but it's actually really tough. This is no easy road. One of the things that you realized pretty quickly was captured by two interesting and distinguished commentators, which is that you realize very quickly how undisciplined your mind really is. Saint Teresa called it that your mind is like an unbroken horse that would go anywhere except where you want it to go. And Plato's analogy was of a mutiny on a ship. And on the ship, the captain and the navigator have been locked up, and control of the ship is taken on by various crew members who, without any particular skill or authority, drive the ship this way and that. And from Plato's point of view, using this analogy, the human task is to quell the mutiny and to take back control of the ship. What can we learn from practitioners and people who have engaged in a long-term practice of concentration like this one and other concentration and meditation exercises? And one of the first things that they say is that the experience is like coming back to ourselves. This is a consistent report, that it's like coming home. The implication being that before we weren't at home. We also hear reports that these people are extremely efficient and effective at what they do. And they also experience peace of mind and joy. So the reports from the long-term practitioners are certainly very hopeful and encouraging. And if an exercise like this leads to greater efficiency and effectiveness and joy, it has to be something that is of benefit in the real world of the golfer. So those are the reports of the long-term practitioners. But what can we learn from research? When I wrote the Golfing Body Mind some 40 years ago, there really wasn't much research on this sort of area. But there's been an awful lot done in the 4 decades since. What they report about what concentration exercises deliver is that it is another way of perceiving and relating to reality. So it delivers perceptual benefits. You see the world differently. The ancient Irish called this silver branch perception, and they saw it as a gift from the gods. The second thing that's reported by psychological research, and this is building on what we've already said, is that there are reports of greater levels of efficiency and enthusiasm from practitioners. What also seems to happen is two things. First of all, the personality is strengthened. It's almost as if the structures of personality within the mind are made stronger. And it seems to be the case that this strength is important to enable the mind to safely experience altered states of consciousness. Now, as we know in the modern world, these altered states can be acquired through various shortcuts. Certainly, there are various substances that you can take that give you these experiences without having to put the hard work in. But there's obviously a couple of problems. One is that these substances can become addictive, but they can also lead to what's called a bad trip. This is not the case with long-term meditation. There is no negative side effect such as that. The second thing that happens is that the practitioner can get past old distractions and all the things that get in the way of performing at your best. It's almost as if the distractions, the prevarications, procrastinations just fall away. From a physiological point of view, there's reports of what's a very interesting combination, and that is of both deep relaxation and acute wakefulness and alertness at the same time. And you might have thought, well, those are two opposite qualities, but no, this is one of the experiences. It's that quality of relaxed concentration, relaxed focus, which has to be a highly desirable skill for the golfer, particularly when they're under pressure. The physiological studies also show that these exercises lead to a decrease in heart and respiration rate. One study found that the heart beats 3 times less per minute, and that the states that they can observe and measure are the complete opposite of an angry and frightened state of mind, both of which we've looked at in the context of golf. And also that there's a decline in the rate of use of oxygen and CO2. And finally, and importantly, there's the observation of presence of alpha waves. And these are brain waves that can actually be measured. And they are the brain waves that are associated with something we'll be looking at in a lot more depth, which is altered states of consciousness. So these altered states of consciousness are described as times of flow, being in the zone, and the peak experiences. So while you cannot dial these up at will, clearly an exercise such as what we've been doing, which is counting the breaths, is a practice that will significantly increase the probability that you will have these experiences, and more importantly, have them when it really matters. So there's a lot of subjective first-hand accounts and research studies from psychological and physiological research that backs up the value of this simple yet difficult set of practices.